I will share my screen. And I've started.
Yep, you can see.
Fantastic. Thank you. The dangers of live displays, ladies and gentlemen. So, as I said, it's my great pleasure to be here. My aim in this short talk is to give a sense of how hivenamix can be usefully applied in managerial workshopping and collaboration. We are finding new applications all the time for hivenamix, but what I'd like to share 3 short examples of what we've done already. I'll avoid detailed descriptions, focusing instead on how hivenamix made a difference and enabled an effective process and delivery of client outcomes through workshopping that might not have been possible otherwise. And if there are any follow-up questions of a detailed nature, I'd be happy to receive them and respond offline, perhaps through Tarek. So, to explain who I am and frame my point of view before I start, a 1-minute profile. I'm a Professor of Strategy and Innovation and the Director of Executive Education at the University of Stirling. That's this beautiful campus in the bottom left of the screen. That's my building. So it's nice to go to work every day. My PhD is in strategic management, but in reality I moved back and forth in my career between business and academia. I started with Procter & Gamble as an engineer, then a manager, and following with Diageo, another large corporation. And over my time, I worked for a number of universities, the main one being the University of Stirling. More recently, I've involved with hivenamix from the start, and previously was a co-owner of startup consultancy. I sit on the board of a Scottish charity, and in the last 10 years, I've worked with a wide range of organisations, both large and small, in the UK and abroad, in strategy and innovation processes and workshops. I mention these things, ladies and gentlemen, to explain why I see a very wide applicability of the subject we are addressing today. So, further, before proceeding to the case examples, I'd like to share a high-level view of how I approach using hivenamix in workshops with any client, including the ones discussed today. Firstly, I think of the client engagement in terms of an architecture. I always start with client outcomes, what they want to achieve from a session, how we can best plan for it, and the factors in their specific situation that need managed for delivery success. That is the most important starting point for any such conversation, in my view. From there, it's about designing a process as a series of questions to ask participants that will drive collaborative working activity, identifying the right people to involve at the right time and to what extent, and the way in which hivenamix be configured swiftly and effectively enable the collaboration. And it's not any one of these that improves workshop experience. It's the combination, and that's the fun. Further, in designing the process, it's typically split into 3 stages of preparing through research, workshop, gathering information, sharing it to enable collaboration. Then, in the workshop setting, prioritising and flag session towards decisions and recommendations that are best for the organisation. And after the workshop, taking those outputs into action and making sure the collaboration makes a difference through an ongoing process of implementation and delivery of results. So, what we try to do is to use these ideas by now to explain three short cases at a high level to try to highlight role hivenamix can play in addressing collaboration issues and collaborating outcomes. The first organisation I'd like to talk about is an independent financial advisory firm. So I worked with this firm over a year ago, and we did the exercise this short time ago. They have about 100 employees split across 3 sites, and the workshop that we undertook was to agree strategic priorities for the next year. There was no debate about the long-term objectives for the organisation. These were set by the directors. The target of the session was how we could agree priority initiatives across the sites that made sense for the whole group, that would actually be delivered and were consistent with those overall objectives. Having tried to do this sort of work previously, there were 2 main challenges that this organisation did to overcome. Firstly, in a 2-hour session, the management team managing a large volume of ideas into some sort of agreed priorities was a key challenge. But also, managing and stopping politics and game playing between different sides was something that they were struggling with. So, to address this through a hivenamix enabled approach, we did 2 things. In advance of the workshop session, all organisational participants were invited to join a hivenamix session through a simple email to connect to a model, which allowed in the week before everyone to contribute ideas and evaluate the current organisation needs. Effectively, hivenamix was used as a survey tool here to then prepare the ground for a live discussion where all the managerial staff were able to start voting and rating the different suggestions that had been uncovered during the research. On the screen you can see an extract from that session where voting used management colleague to indicate their agreement with a suggested priority initiative, and the star rating system was used by them to indicate how much they supported an idea or not. At the end of a 2-hour session, a set of sensible agreed outcomes achieved that were immediately put into practice. But another way in which hivenamix enabled an outcome was through those 2 hours, conversation was of very high quality because of the pre-work that had been done. Every single participant was working at all times, thinking, reading, evaluating, discussing, in a way that's not possible when someone was standing with a flip chart, even you're trying to assemble post-it notes. And through that process involving everyone, it built a huge amount of commitment to the outcome. It is very difficult to disagree with yourself if you've been involved at all stages in sharing your ideas and producing the outcomes. At the end of a 2-hour session, a set of sensible agreed outcomes achieved that were immediately put into practice. But another way in which hivenamix enabled an outcome was through those 2 hours, conversation was of very high quality because of the pre-work that had been done. Every single participant was working at all times, thinking, reading, evaluating, discussing, in a way that's not possible when someone was standing with a flip chart, even you're trying to assemble post-it notes. And through that process involving everyone, it built a huge amount of commitment to the outcome. It is very difficult to disagree with yourself if you've been involved at all stages in sharing your ideas and producing the outcomes. So this client illustrates how hivenamix can enable agreement around practical priorities in a very short period of time, and also the building of commitment towards a shared set of outcomes. The second example I would like to share is really quite different, and this is an ongoing project. This is live just now. With a government regulator in Scotland, the aim was to run a workshop session which produced a connected picture across a large organisation with hundreds of employees and tens of sites, create a picture of how different functions and departments contribute to energy policy for the nation of Scotland. The challenge here is that this is a highly complex task, not only involving multiple technical experts, but dealing with very complicated subject matter that could only be achieved through group input. Previously, this organisation had tried this many times, and it proved just too much data to handle, or impossible to get agreement from different experts, getting people together at the same time. And with a scarcity of resources to deliver this, the challenge was to create a map of different functions for contributing to policy outcomes. So we assembled 24 scientists, technologists, and department heads together to follow the collaborative process using hivenamix. We started with a live workshop conducted over 4 hours, where each expert described the main activities that they would undertake and add value to for the main energy policy initiative in this regulator. On the screen, you can see the entry box with describe their suggestion, offer supporting notes, and then use the hashtagging function to connect to existing organisational activity. This was a very useful approach to take late project, as the experts in the room were effectively helping us solve complexity as they entered their own ideas. The hashtags were artistic organisational languages and concepts, so it was effectively helping to connect input to existing thoughts and ideas in the organisation. We then used the experts assembled to connect the ideas covered in the tags to the organisational objectives. So we're effectively building a pyramid where at the bottom are all the activities suggested by participants, which they have mapped to existing key organisational activities, which we're then asking them to give us their understanding of how well those activities connect to objectives. What it meant was, for the session sponsor, by the end of 4 hours, they had a joint picture highlighting the current strengths and weaknesses of how complex organisational activity was driving some very focused organisational outcomes. The gaps became obvious through the rating of the experts as to where more work needed to be done to objectives, and the ongoing findings were displayed through hivenamix to enable the participants to trace and understand the views of their colleagues. This was a massive educational exercise as well, ladies and gentlemen, where by participating, experts gained understanding of the other kinds of contributions that were going on in the organisation. It was very efficient and inclusive, and for the reasons I've already mentioned, the outputs were assembled as people made contributions. The sorting and analysis was done in a way that took the pressure off the session sponsor. They didn't have to take away inputs afterwards and then process them. That work was done ongoing. So hivenamix enabled us to accept complexity, but then produce a useful and practical output, which met the needs of the organisation. The participants asked us to leave hivenamix open so that they could use hivenamix as a reference point on a continuing basis for their strategy work around energy quality. Now, a final example, just to give you maybe a more classical sense of how hivenamix can help a session, was a strategy session I did with a letting company last year. This is a market leader in Scotland, a very agile online firm with some big personalities that is great at operational execution, but not necessarily in a connected way, and with a self-described interest in making shared decisions. I say it was a classical intervention, as they were looking for a business strategy developed in one day in a live session between the owner and the senior management. The big challenge was getting useful and actionable outputs without the owner dominating, whilst respecting the inputs and constraints imposed by the owner's own views, and a desire to be very clear as to how the actions emerging lead to one-year outcomes which make sense for the organisation in the long term. Now, we ran most of the day using hivenamix to gather ideas and vote and rate all the required ingredients of that strategy in a way that similar to cases A and B. But what we then used was the mapping function in hivenamix to check that all the elements fitted together and to close any identified gaps. What you can see on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, is the output of individual conversations through the day combined into a chopped up picture, where the actions and initiatives are understood as to how they support one-year objectives, and those one-year objectives are understood in how they support three-year objectives. This was an incredibly productive conversation which addressed all the challenges and delivered an agreed plan at the end of the session from a blank screen at the start. It shows how hivenamix enable connected outcomes, not just the top ideas for action or hard books for the year, but fit together. And importantly for the organisation, what it gave was a business plan, read the map from the top down. These are our objectives, and looking down, this is how we're going to deliver them. But also a statement of purpose when the map is read in reverse. For employees of the organisation asked to complete an initiative or an action, it was then possible to explain to them why this work mattered. So if we do this initiative, it's going to help us achieve this year, so in turn allow it to sustain our organisation in the long term. So,
Dave, we have 3 minutes to go.
How hivenamix can enable a different form of workshop activity, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to summarise with some closing thoughts.
Dave, we have 3 minutes to go.
I have 2 minutes to talk. Thank you. I suppose hivenamix enabled preparation for a session involving as many stakeholders as is required and building in existing and external thinking set fertile grounds for workshop. During the workshop, the engagement and quality of conversation that you get is incredible, and through an appropriate facilitated approach can deliver action and objectives and outcomes in a very short period of time, for then enabling the ongoing management and delivery of those outcomes in a transparent and verifiable way on an ongoing basis. Compared to the potential methods I used in my 10 years of collaborative management work with hivenamix, I'm incredibly excited about the potential of the platform to enable better management work in a better way. It's just the start of our journey with this. As discovered ways and collaborating with colleagues all over the world. But thank you very much for listening to these ideas, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you well in your own exploration of innovative approaches to shopping. Thank you. Shukran.
Thank you.